I'd like to call this meeting of the Palmyra Borough Council to order. Everyone please rise for Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for the armed services. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
you. Brendan, may we please have roll call?
Counselor Andrews,
Present.
Counselor Catalani,
Here.
Counselor Flegel. Here. Counselor Quiroli.
Here.
Counselor Rydell,
Here.
Counselor Touche,
Here.
Counselor Shear,
Here.
Mayor Carpenter.
Here.
We have a full house.
Okay. Just a reminder to everyone to please silence all cellular devices during the meeting. Thank you. And a reminder to council members to please turn on your microphones. We have two special visitors tonight. First one is Brian Marchuk of Brown Plus. He is here to discuss the 2023 audit report.
Yes.
Hello.
Thank you for inviting me tonight, and nice to see everybody again. So my name is Brian Marchuk. I am the principal on the Borough of Palmyra engagement for 2023's audit. My team performed the audit work at two periods of time, one during the fourth quarter of 2023, and then during the first quarter of 2024. The DCD report would have been filed in the end of March. So why don't we begin with the first page of the report. So this is the auditor's opinion. It's in three separate pages. The most important page there will be the first page here, and that's the first paragraph, which gives the opinion. The opinion is on whether the financial statements are in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. We're not giving an opinion on the internal controls. That's sometimes a misconception. We're just giving an opinion on whether the numbers in the statements are in accordance with those standards. That's what we're giving that opinion on. And we can say we gave what we call an unmodified or a clean opinion. It's the highest that you can receive, the highest and best. And this was the same opinion that was provided last year as well. The other sections of that opinion discuss the responsibilities of the borough and then responsibilities of the auditor as well. I'm not going to go into that part. The most important part would be the first paragraph. Any questions there? Okay. So I'm going to skip through pages 3 through 19. The reason why is because that section is called the Management Discussion and Analysis section. That's a summary of what we're just going to discuss. So I'm not going to go through the same exact detail that we'll be going through the larger, more significant areas. So let's start by going to page 21. This is where we start to get into the financial statements themselves. Page 20 and 21, this is called the Statement of Net Position. It's just a government term for a balance sheet. It's what the typical for-profit term for this statement is. This presents all of the borough's assets, liabilities, and equity, or as it's presented here, net position. Again, another government term. So that's the net position is your accumulation of profits and losses since the borough was created. The most important section there would be that equity section. So as of December 31st, 2023, the borough has about $21.7 million of equity. That excludes the pensions. We're talking about everything but the pensions is what we're referring to here. We will talk about the pensions. They're just in the footnotes where we'll review those. So the equity is broken up into three sections. The first section there is net investment in capital assets, which is the largest portion. So it's about $14.5 million. So that'd be all the property, equipment of the borough, net of any debt and depreciation. So that would be we consider that just a net of the of accumulated depreciation and debt. And it's that I wouldn't call that the value. I would just call that really just a book value. Because appraised value would be much different than that figure. The other portion of net position would be the restricted portion for the library and the highway, which is about 90,000. And then the final section there is the unrestricted. So that would be able to be used for any purpose going forward, but there's also capital projects in there and improvements. So even though it says unrestricted, there's still money being set aside for those projects. So it's just unrestricted in the government accounting standards term of unrestricted. It's not in the management term of unrestricted. So I don't want to get that confused. But there is about $7 million there of unrestricted. What I like to do is compare that $7 million figure to the expenditures on an annual basis to see, okay, how long could the borough survive if there was no revenues coming in? We know that wouldn't happen, but just as an example, when I do that calculation, the borough has about 4 months on hand. Doesn't sound like a lot, but you're actually right in the upper middle of the benchmark. The benchmark we typically see for most municipalities is about 2 to 7 months. So you're right in that sweet spot there. And that was very similar to last year's as well. It actually increased compared to last year's by a couple days. Any questions on that first statement there? All right, let's flip to the next page, page 22. It's called a statement of activities. Again, another government term for a income statement on the for-profit side. So what the statement shows is all the revenues and expenses that the borough had throughout the year, and then it comes down to a figure called changes in net position, otherwise called net income if it's a positive, and net loss if it's a negative. In the borough's case, in total, there was a gain of about $933,000. Just a couple items about that there. So yes, there was a gain, but it's really the result of spending, of purchase of property and equipment during the year, net of depreciation. And I'll let you know how that works here. So what happened is there was about $770,000 that was being expensed. Well, we include that as capital assets, so it's considered an asset. So we take it out of expenses and put that on an asset in your book. So it's basically like saying that $770,000 didn't appear as an expense, but it's just appreciated through the useful life is what we're doing. So we're just taking that and using it throughout what we estimate the useful life to be. So because we pulled that property out, that's how we have this significant gain. If we would, so I would consider this a cash gain. This is just a revenue less expense. Again, it's in accordance to U.S. generally accepted accounting principles, which requires us to anything that is greater, any property that's going to be greater than 1 year in useful life, we need to include it as an asset. So because we pulled all that out, that's the reason why we have this significant gain right now. Other than that, when I was comparing the budget to actual for the earned income taxes, from what was budgeted to what was actually occurred, about $103,000 more in earned income taxes were received this year. And I've noticed that at other municipalities too, the amount of earned income taxes being budgeted versus being received, what was received was actually much greater, which is good. It's telling us that people are working in the borough and generating income, which is then generating earned income taxes. So with those two areas there, with those two items, so the property and equipment that was included as capital assets, and then the increase in the earned income taxes, that's what gets us to that $900,000 net income figure. Again, not a change in cash. Any questions there? Okay. So the next statement we're going to go to is on page 23. So this is called the balance sheet. It's for the governmental fund, so we're only looking at the general fund, the capital reserve fund, and then we have a couple of the smaller funds, the highway, the library. There's some other smaller ones in there as well. So, and we're only looking at the short-term items. So we're only looking at the accounts receivable, the cash, and then we're looking at accounts payable. We're not looking at any debt or any capital property and equipment. That's the previous statement. Here we're just focusing on what I would consider as your budgetary basis, how you build your budget is what we're going to be looking at with these statements here. So the total equity of the government funds only, so excluding the pensions the sewer and the refuge, we're sitting at about $2.5 million. The part that's considered unassigned, or the general funds portion, is about $952,000 in total. This is a slight increase actually from last year as well, by about $200,000 for that unassigned portion. And that's just because the general fund earned some net income, which we'll go over in the next page. What that unassigned balance is primarily made up of is cash. Is cash and cash. So the good part is it's liquid funds, something that's can be easily converted or already cash at this time. Are there any questions on that statement there?
Brian?
Yep.
When you're referring to the highway aid, you're talking about liquid fuels?
Liquid fuels, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure everybody
Yep.
understood what that is.
That term does go interchangeably. So let's flip to page 25. So 25 is going to be the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in fund balance for just the governmental funds again. So this is just the income statement. Third line from the bottom shows the net change or net income. A little bit deceiving with the general fund because we had a transfer out of about $291,000 to the capital reserve fund. So for my purposes with these numbers here, the general fund actually had a net income of almost $400,000. So when we get to the budget to actual statement, that'll be the last thing I go over. I'll go over that change or that increase in a little bit more detail. But one of the primary factors there has to do with the earned income taxes, which I talked about previously. There's also a couple other figures that affects that as well. The capital reserve fund, before transfers, actually lost very similar to what the general fund gained, a little bit more than what the general fund gained, but it's just the result of just the number of projects that occurred during the year. The capital reserve fund, you're going to have years where it's might have generating a little bit of money, but most years it's being used because we're setting aside those funds for future capital improvements. And then the rest of the funds, the highway, the library, they had very minor either gains or losses during the year, and that amounted to, in total, about a $24,000 gain during the year. Any questions with that statement? Okay. So then the last statement I'm going to jump into before we get into the footnotes, we're going to go to page 28. And we're going to look at the income statement exclusively for the sewer and the refuge funds. So the sewer fund, third line from the bottom here, generated a net income of about $89,000. The refuge fund, a slight loss of about $18,000. So very comparable to what occurred last year as well. It's almost a break even, maybe a slight increase compared to the previous years. Really, for the sewer fund, the biggest thing was the interest earned on the CDs and the Pliget investments. The interest rates in 23 were just much better than 24, so that assisted with that slight increase in net income for the year of about $89,000. And then the refuge fund, last year it had a slight gain. This year, just a very minor loss, and that it just really depends on the amount of income generated for the refuge fund. You know what the expenses are going to be from year to year, so it's just a matter of the income. But it's really very close to a break even. Okay. So let's jump into the footnotes of the statements here. So the footnotes of the statements, they're going to detail everything that we just discussed in the schedule, the first up to 15 pages of the financial, the statements here. It's what I would consider just the glossary, the dictionary, brief history is discussed here. I'm going to go into the sections that I consider the most important to identify, just to point out a couple things. So on page 42 is the first thing that we'll take a look at. And there's a schedule at the bottom. We're breaking the cash and the investments up. So there's the first grouping there that totals deposits is all the cash, so about $250,000 was covered by FDIC of the cash, and then about $3.6 million was covered by Act 72. So all of the borough's cash is at least either insured or collateralized. And for for those of you that are unsure what Act 72 is, that's an act that requires banks to have collateral on hand for all their government deposits. So if the borough deposits at a bank, the financial institution has to have over 100% of collateral on hand. It's a legislative requirement. Then the second schedule at the bottom there just details the investments. So we have the Pliget Funds, Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust. That's an external pooled investment. It's invested in securities that are approved by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that municipalities can contribute to, just like U.S. Treasuries, or an example of those can't be any type of stocks. You can do that with your pension. You can't do that with the typical municipal day-to-day funds. The other item there is the certificates of deposit with Jonestown Bank, which have already matured in 2024, but for 2023 they still had balances there. So that just details the breakdown of what's in your deposits and investments. Then if we go to page 45, this schedule shows the beginning balance, the additions, the disposals, and then the ending balance for the capital assets for the governmental funds. So excludes the sewer, the refuge, and the pensions. The pensions won't have this anyway. But the bottom number there for the far right column, the total capital assets net of depreciation, sits at about $17.25 million. Slight increase compared to last year, and that's because the amount of construction that occurred net of depreciation was a positive number. This is considered a book value, what we call book value. It's not called an appraised value. So appraised value would be much different. I don't have an appraised value because we only assess the book value. So currently, this is all of the main government side of property and equipment is sitting at about $17.25 million. And just so you're aware, about $6.8 million is depreciation. So the actual cost is about $24 million prior to any depreciation. So let's go to to page 48. This is where we discuss the long-term liabilities. So there's two long-term liabilities for the borough. The first one, and they're both associated with the North Londonderry Township funds that were issued. The first one has to do with the 14 and 15 bonds that were issued by the township. So we have a schedule here at the middle of the page that breaks down the maturity of those funds and then the required principal and interest payments. So it's a good schedule for just budgeting purposes. The total principal and interest for 2024 is about $400,000 on this obligation. In total, what's due through the 2040 is about $7 million and that's principal and interest. If we're just looking at principal, then there's only about $5.4 million that's due. And then on the next page is the General Obligation Bond Series 2018. Same type of schedule. Breaks down the principal and interest throughout the life of this obligation. About $445,000 is due in 2024, both principal and interest. And then final payment due in 2039. The total obligation right now of principal and interest is slightly over $7 million at this time. So then the second to last section I want to go over is going to be the pensions. So one item to note about these pensions is because the borough is with PMRS, the actuarial valuations are 1 year old. So we're looking at information from 2022, not 2023. 2022 did not have that good of a year with market value returns. So as a result, there was a decline in the funding of both of these pensions. Now we fast forward to '23, we have a different story. So looking at these next year, we should see a different picture. We should see more gains. But for this year, the non-uniform pension, which was a asset last year, or was considered fully funded, is now slightly underfunded. It's underfunded by about 8%, so pretty close to being fully funded. Last year it was about 110% funded, but because of market value decreases that occurred of about $550,000 for that pension, that was the result of why it's right now underfunded by about 8%. Again, very minor. It would just take 1 year of positive returns to get that back up into an asset. So I expect in 2023 that we'll see that as an asset again, over 100% funded. The police is still fully funded. It's 106% funded, so that one's totally funded. It did also have a loss as well in market value during the year. But what I've been seeing late, as of at least the past couple years for the borough, is it just depends on the market of whether these are both fully funded or a slight underfunded liability. But as long as that MMO is funded each year, you should be in good shape, as long as the market returns keep going up. Questions there? So the last item that I want to go over then is going to be on page 65 and 66. And this is going to be the budget to actual results for the general fund. So the general fund, and this would be the general fund only, that's included in the financial statements. None of the other funds are required. So the general fund projected a gain of about $275,000. But what occurred was a gain of about $402,000. So the reason for this increase was the result of three things here. So the earned income and local services tax. So as a result of residents working in the borough and then paying taxes then on that money that they generated, that increased in total for those two tax types by almost $200,000. So that's half of it. And then the rest of that increase is related to kind of a mixture of the license permits, fines, forfeitures, interest, rents, and charges for services, which were all slightly over budget by either $10,000 or $20,000. So that added up to about $85,000. And then the rest of that had to do with the real estate transfer taxes and real estate taxes. So about $43,000 more real estate taxes were collected, and that really depends on collections during the year. So just more delinquent taxes were collected. And then real estate transfer taxes, real estate transfer taxes are very hard to project just because it depends on a lot of things going on, and economy being one of them. And that was over budget by about $20,000. So expenses were either right in line or very comparable, depending on in total for each of for the departments. So it's really basically related to the revenue of why the general fund generated what they did before transfers during the year. So again, about $275,000 gain expected, $402,000 before transfers is what actually occurred for the general fund. Any questions there on the financial statements? Okay. So the only last two items I want to bring up is we had just two comments that we'll have a management letter prepared for. First item is a capitalization policy. What we're suggesting there is to keep a inventory of all your property and equipment, to make it a little bit easier to establish a threshold. That way you're not including keys and things like that, small items. So having a threshold would make that efficient to retain some type of inventory or log of what the capital and property equipment is for the borough. What I typically see, it ranges. For infrastructure, the project value might be $25,000 in total. And then maybe for the rest, for the equipment and buildings, like 5,000 or something for each individual, as an example. That could be used. That could be higher than that. I've seen it go all the way up to $50,000 for infrastructure projects, and then even $25,000 for individual. So it really just comes down to the amount that you would like to, or I guess the details of what you would like to consider capital property and equipment. But that was one suggestion that we had. The other one is there was a couple, especially two large accounts payable, one for Flyway Excavating and the other for Kingsley Construction, that were included in the incorrect period. So these were project costs that occurred during '23, paid for during '24. So we just want to make sure that going forward, that if the services we want to record these expenses in the year that they relate to, not when they were paid. So it's just to keep an eye on that in the future to make sure that at least the large numbers are being included as accounts payable at the end of the year, even though they weren't fully paid. Other than that, everything else was in good shape. So if there's any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, once this is approved, we can get final reports then.
Any questions from council? Great.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Always love reading it.
So 3.5, or 350,000 out of 3.7 million was less than 1% variance. Very nice. You don't, that's magic.
It is.
No, that is magic.
It is. With the way that how volatile the economy is today, that's great.
Very, very nicely done, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have the week of September the 9th, we have scheduled an industrial appraisal for insurance purposes, but it will also help with what Brian was talking about, keeping an inventory of your capital assets. That week, the appraiser and I will be all over the borough looking at everything that we have and putting a value to it. So that'll be a nice opportunity to have that updated for the next audit. The other thing too is our next audit's going to be a tad bit different because 5 months into the year, we lost the police department. So you're gonna see some different numbers. They're not gonna be as high, you know. We have a definite shift in.
Yeah, well, and what will also, as we're talking about capital assets there, because the police department is no longer there, we'll have to transfer those capital assets. So that'll be another piece of the puzzle.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great. That takes us to our next special visitor. Dr. Bill Seaton from ARM Group is here to explain the results of the borough-wide geophysical study and stormwater model.
We live here? Good. First off, need to apologize for not being here 2 weeks ago. My bad. That's all I'm going to say. You can throw something at me if you want, but probably better to get on with the talk. One minor consolation, but also anyone who came last week or 2 weeks ago expecting me to be here, my apology. One minor consolation is the slide you're looking at. We got to take a drone shot of the Millard Quarry on Friday. and got a water level, and that will help us understand, it's a data point for understand the quarry water level and how it's impacting the borough. And we'll get to that at the end of the talk. Everybody hear me okay? Okay. Okay, next slide, please. Just a quick slide, which maybe tell people what they already know. Borough of Palmyra is right in the middle of this map. You can see Harrisburg on the left, Lebanon on the right. And that funny-looking series of blue dots is a karst bedrock zone. That means there's lots, all those dots are mapped sinkholes, and of course Palmyra's kind of in the middle of it. But so are a lot of other places, all from New Jersey down through Harrisburg, down the Route 81 corridor. It's the same problem. So here we are. Next slide, please. I want to talk about the surface water modeling part of our project and then the groundwater modeling part. I talked here earlier this year. We showed a lot of data. I'm not going to show a lot of data today, but I'm going to talk about the results of what we found. So we did a computer model of this, how surface water moves and also how the groundwater moves, and we'll get into that right now. The first step in understanding surface water movement is to understand something called a watershed. You can see the borough outline in black there in the middle of it. You can see the blue Millard Quarry. Killinger Creek watershed to the east in red, Spring Creek to the west. A watershed is basically an area where if a drop of water falls somewhere in that watershed, it all ends up in the same place. It flows the same place. It doesn't go other places. It stays in that watershed, theoretically. So there's two places water moves in Palmyra Borough, kind of to the west and to the east in a big scale. Okay, next slide, please. Also, we need to talk a little bit about the hydrologic cycle for Palmyra, averaging about 42 inches of precip every year. About half of that, it goes to what's called evapotranspiration. That's what evaporates and what the plants take up, almost half, a little over half. Runoff is just literally what it means, water running off and somewhere else. And then underground infiltration, that's what gets soaked into the soil and goes underground. The problem with something like this is these numbers are annual averages, and these numbers all change very dramatically during the course of a storm. At first, you're going to have a lot of evapotranspiration, almost no infiltration underground, and very limited runoff until it starts raining harder and harder. And then the ground gets saturated, your evapotranspiration slows down or stabilizes, your infiltration increases, and your runoff increases. So that's the job of a stormwater engineer. That's what they do. They figure that stuff out and kind of the science of understanding how to deal with stormwater. Next slide, please. Kind of another important slide I wanted to show you, and we color-coded this. Again, you see the borough outline in the dashed white, black and white line. This is a topographic map, the lay of the land. The red areas are high areas, topographically high. The blue are low. And so what this is saying is to the west side of Palmyra, you see a lot of blue areas, a lot of low areas. To the south and the west, pretty consistently. Whereas to the east, you see kind of one area that's low. And what this is saying is all the water to the west, in that western watershed, flows in all those blue areas to the west. To the east, it all kind of flows into one place, right there. And this area here is also the kind of the epicenter of sinkhole activity in Palmyra. It is a natural focal point of where groundwater and surface water flows. And that is why almost all of the sinkhole repairs and issues are over here. Sinkhole Saloon is right there. So, very important point is just nature, right? Just what nature did. Okay, next slide. Now this is where the computer jumps in. We took that last map you just saw and subdivided it into a series of 23 local watersheds for the borough. And these are smaller watersheds within the borough where we can actually quantitatively say, okay, any water here will flow in this direction along Arch Street. If it, on the other side of the road, on the other side of Main Street, it's going to flow into this one here. And so this is a very important slide and a very important part of the computer model that allows us now to quantify where water is going. In addition, all these green spots, those are the injection wells in the borough. So now we can say where the water's coming from and where it's going to any particular injection well. Right now, we're in a good situation. last I checked, even the big rains we had in the last several weeks, no problems. The injection wells appear to be working well. They're not flooding, they're not causing floods, they're not causing trouble. Great, 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 excellent. If it keeps going that way, we're good. However, if some reason we start getting injection wells backing up, causing flooding, we'll want to go to this map and understand where's the water coming from that's going to that injection well, and can that be managed better? New injection wells, diverting the water, slowing the water down with some kind of new stormwater feature where we can actually capture the water early and slow it down as it goes to a well, and those kind of things. So this map's going to be very important in future engineering and future understanding and future decision-making for stormwater management in the borough. By the way, if you have any questions in the middle of this, please ask me right away. Go to the next slide if you would, Roger. Here's simply a listing of that map you saw before. You can see the 23 separate mapped local watersheds. I put names on them. The acreage in the borough and total acreage, which ones have injection wells, and where they're downgrading point like Killinger Creek. These North Hetrick Ponds and Spring Creek, this is all Spring Creek Western watershed. Notice all of the injection wells here in this particular Western watershed, they're all, that's the middle school. They're all in one spot. Middle school made those particularly to handle the rooftop water about 10 years ago. So again, almost all the injection wells are going to be in the eastern side of the borough. You go to the next one. Groundwater modeling. We talked a little bit about surface water modeling. Now the water that's underground. Once you can't see it anymore, where's it go? What's it going to do? To handle this, you can go to the next one. We first made a map of the water table surface, or estimate of the water table surface in the borough, where we took all the streams, creeks, all the surface water we could, and then combined it with the water levels that we measured in the monitoring wells. And those are in the middle, and made this map. The main takeaway from this is that the water table is highest where you see the green to the north, and it's lowest where you see the light blue. Again, the quarry and the areas in the middle of the borough have very similar water table elevations, strongly suggesting that a lot of this part of the borough is the same, almost the same water table elevation as the quarry right now. We suspected it, not sure though. We use this information to feed our actual computer model of the groundwater. Because if you see a correlation like this, you still have to prove it. How do you make this fit? How does this happen? And can you explain it using the laws of groundwater movement? That's what the groundwater model did. Go to the next one. So we took that, input it into a computer model. And what you're looking at here is the computer model of the two layers of the groundwater model. Here's the borough outline here. These colors here are the natural colors, natural hydraulic conductivities. These are, typical for rock. And this is the lower layer, and this is the upper layer. The upper layer is the top 700 feet of below ground surface. So most of the activity is here. And what we did, we said, okay, our water table is covering all the area around the borough. But in the borough, to explain that map we just looked at, we've got to have a very, very high conductivity zone like this, basically an underground stream to explain that. These hydraulic conductivities measure how fast water moves through the rock. Natural numbers are, 2-3 feet per day. Water moves very slowly most of the time through rock. So low numbers. To make this work, to fit the data together, we've got to put very high conductivity values here, orders of magnitude higher, 10,000. That's like a stream. That's like a small stream underground. Running from the quarry area to here. When you make that, the computer says, yeah, I can fit the data if you do that. The data fits if you do that. From a geology point of view, there's nothing really particularly surprising about that. It happens. We do a lot of work around quarries. We do a lot of work throughout central Pennsylvania. This happens a lot. In fact, if you want to drill a municipal water well, you want to look for these, right? Because you get high yields. I would say, you look at that, it explains the groundwater. It's not something to worry about. Just know it's there, and it's actually helping the borough a lot because this is the pathway for all our stormwater getting out of the borough. That's our pathway. That helps the borough. But the nice thing is we quantified it. We made a model, made it fit. That's a big deal. We have a very strong correlation between quarry water and here. Okay, do the next slide. Taking all this data and the data we collected, we generated a list of areas in the borough that are primary concerns. Go to the next slide. There's 4 areas. First, before we talk about that, there's another factor that can impact areas and make them more susceptible to sinkhole activity, and it's called break line areas. And what a break line is simply if you have the surface, ground surface slopes steeply, and then all of a sudden it flattens out. Break line is that zone right where the slope changes. These areas inside these are called the break line areas that we interpreted. Notice this C-shaped one right where you might expect it. There's a couple of Southeast Park here, some other places, Cherry Street. They're scattered around. So that doesn't guarantee sinkholes are going to happen, but it is certainly a factor that correlates a lot with a sinkhole activity. Okay, you can do the next slide. Okay, these are the 4 areas of concern. This is right out of my report, which a good final draft has been submitted already to the borough. South Grant Street, right here. Here's East Cherry, East Maple, South Grant. And this is one of those areas of, those break line areas. Here's the MASW profile that goes from here to here. That's from this point here. MASW profile, we'll go over it again. Here's your ground surface. You're looking into the earth about 50 feet down. Think of a slice of a birthday cake. This is the top layer, that's the bottom layer. It's a good way to think about it. So here's your soil. The greens are your soil, and we'll call it relatively unconsolidated rock. The dashed line is the top of bedrock. So all these reds and purples, this is solid, pretty solid rock, maybe some fractured zones here as well. So notice how the soil thickness changes substantially, up and down, up and down, up and down. That means these are probably ancient fault zones. The thing is here, when you see the blue areas like this, that means you have unconsolidated rock and a natural pathway to get water from the surface into rock. That's a problem. If you're not managing stormwater at the surface, that's a sinkhole maker. Notice this one here. It's green. In other words, greens are better rock strength here. Blue is bad. Green is better. This is about $1 million worth of grout that we put in the ground at Cherry Street. That's why it's green.
I can't see because of the podium.
Before that work was done, this was like that. So that's the reality of it. And we grouted all the way up here. That's all grout. Notice here, you've got a blue zone. That's the natural water table aquifer that's in the soil broken rock zone. Hope I'm not scaring anybody. Jolly's cool. The thing is, this is, even a situation like this is not a problem in general if you're managing your stormwater. Okay, next slide. This is area number 2 of concern. East Cherry Street. So this is your MSW line here to here. We're looking at it here. Notice again, we've got slopes coming down and kind of flattening out. Water comes down. These steep slopes, it's moving relatively fast, and it kind of stops and piles up. That's sinkhole making potential. Notice we've got blue zones in here, maybe even all the way to the surface. We call it lower velocity zones. That's problematic. However, this is where there's a stormwater basin right on Cherry, a relatively recent one, well, 10 years ago, recent enough, with an injection well. So this is being managed now with, we'll call it the up-to-date stormwater facilities. There's right on the road, you can see several gratings that collect stormwater. They all go to the stormwater basin that's right there, and then it goes into the injection well. Excellent, good, good. However, and we'll talk about this at the end, all the pipes that are now underground connecting all the stormwater inlets need to be evaluated and inspected on some kind of annual basis. Because if those pipes break and you start leaking stormwater into here and don't know about it, you get more sinkholes in an area you thought was fixed. So that just says maintenance, right? Some kind of annual maintenance or some, maybe however often you want to do it, you get your camera down there and inspect your pipes, your stormwater pipes, and your sewers. And anything else that's underground that's got a pipe that you can get a camera. You check them on a regular basis because you've got this. Okay, next slide. Another area, this is by the Palmyra Middle School. Here's our MASW profile here and here. Notice, hey, we got a pretty good bedrock here, pretty consistent. However, there's an old injection well right in the parking lot. Maybe you're familiar with it. It dumps water into this shallow aquifer. And notice how very close to the ground surface, it's low velocity. Notice how you get away, you've got higher velocity material above it and all your water's flowing here. We've actually drilled through this in a number of places. When you hit this zone, there's hundreds of gallons a minute, huge flows of water. Very shallow down. I suspect the original settlers here hand dug wells and got into that and got their water. Now you have to be careful because now we make sinkholes with this kind of situation. In fact, a couple of years ago there was a pretty bad one, right near the well. And kids walking to school on the sidewalk kind of deal, right? So anyway, that's an area of concern. Be worth looking at. Again, here's the middle school. We've got a bunch of injection wells in the front that are deep injection wells that are they're injecting water down deep and do not pose this kind of situation. Okay, next slide. This is the last one. A little bit more complicated and shows you some interesting detail. This is Southeast Park here, Forge Road Elementary. You got two break line areas. The park's in the middle of one. We're right now working on a project here. We're scanning it and determining what to do to fix some sinkhole activity there. There's been some sinkholes reported over here with homeowners recently. Here's the situation. You've got Walnut Street scan here. Again, you're seeing this up and down in fractured rock, and you're seeing, attachment to the surface. This one's M27's here, north-south. Notice this is red here. This is like really low velocity. This is a major fault zone here. Water, it's just, the rock is soft. Now, we do have injection well, recent injection well we installed, injection well 11 in this area. I think it seems to be under control. Again, this is not a threat if you manage your stormwater at the surface. But these are areas of concern. Here's another one. Notice the thick bedrock here, but once you go down the hill, water starts piling up. Potentially right here, you've got some potential sinkhole areas. Also here, over in this area by the park. And we know we got a sinkhole problem over here. So these are areas that we can look at now and prioritize these as far as, let's focus on these as far as remedial action, inspections, whatever we need to do to get these under control or off the list of serious areas. Most of the rest of the borough, and we collected over 20 miles of data like this, most of the borough looks pretty good. You have areas like this, but there's pretty good rock above it. As long as you take care of your stormwater, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, you can go to the next one. Millard Quarry. Let's go down one more. This is kind of cool. We got a series of aerial photographs of the quarry. 2019 to 2022, 3-year period. This is where the quarry's at its deepest, at minus 60 feet below sea level is deep. And then 2022, minus 20, so they just turned off the pumps just before this picture was taken, or right around that time. So the quarry is just starting to fill up. July 2023, water's up to 200 feet. Water rose 220 feet from here to here. Over that time period, it's less than a year, right? Since then, we've taken a number of, 2 drone shots in particular. So you can see, here's a cross-section of the quarry. You can see the quarry, the deep quarry. This is up to 2023. Here's, like today, up here, 340 feet elevation. It's Lake Palmyra now, right? It's my name, Lake Palmyra. Here's our water level. over 8 billion gallons of water in that quarry. And that's where all your stormwater's going, evidently, by what we're seeing. Not a problem, it's a good thing. A little side note, you got that much water, at the bottom of that quarry, you know, near sea level, temperature of that water is gonna stay always year-round at 50, 55 degrees, just the way it is, it's nature. That's a really good geothermal resource for anybody doing heating and HVAC work, heating or cooling on a large industrial scale. The geothermal projects we have, our clients love them because they save something, over half their cost of conventional HVAC can be saved with a geothermal system. Again, it's, you know, borough doesn't own it, I understand that, but it's right next to the borough property. So I'm thinking, boy, if any of this commercial property here, someone want to make a big warehouse or something, there's a 50% savings in in energy, potentially. Just want to throw that out, don't have to do anything. But it's cool. So the Millard Core is a thing. Okay, question?
Question. Does the water still come from the west end of that, dump into the quarry yet? Or is that?
The
Does water actually come in from the quarry into the quarry from Pomona? Because I should have, I was down in the quarry.
oh yeah, yeah.
That's still coming in there.
Yep, but it's equilibrating now.
Okay.
But the injection wells, when we get a storm and water flows in an injection well, it flows to the quarry. Oh yeah, it probably will forever.
And you know, Lowe's and Walmart paid to get the water, runoff water into the quarry too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's a nice place to put water. You haven't, the thing that's nice about this, you don't have any wells in between, no groundwater, no one needs the water. So dirty water, who cares? And it's, you know, how dirty is it? It's not, so.
Well, you showed in one of the early maps, you had most of the sinkhole problems up toward the east.
Yep.
part. Yet most of these four potential incipient areas of problem seem to be in the south and the west. Right?
Well, south and the east, yeah.
So did any of them line up with that area where the sinkholes are real bad in these four areas? It didn't seem like it did.
Yeah, if you want to go back, let's go back to the map. Nope, go that, right here.
That's your bad sinkhole area.
Right here, you got the Cherry Street here, the middle school is right in this area, the southeast is here, so it's kind of in this area.
Where was that bad sinkhole area you pointed? I thought it was up a little high.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Sinkhole Saloon's right there. Main Street, all that PennDOT work on Main Street was all in here.
But that's potential.
There's a lot of,
Seem to be down to the south and the west.
right now, where we're at is down here because a lot of it's been taken care of. That's the nice thing about it. A lot of the work's been done over the last, I don't know, Roger, 10, 15, 20 years. Has fixed this stuff. And now it's draining away, so the sinkholes just aren't as prominent. People are doing better work with their drain pipes.
So the problem's being cleared up there.
For the most part. Now, maybe I shouldn't say for the most part. It has been, yeah, significant work's been done. I mean, we did that thing by the sheets over here. That's really significant. All that sheets work. You got a catchment basin that's working, it's not leaking anymore, and it's sending all the water here to Arch Street, and it's going right to the quarry. And that old injection well, it used to have a lake there on Arch Street. I mean, there's guys I work with said when they were little kids, they used to love storms, they'd go there and just play in the pond. That's all gone, pretty much gone now. It doesn't happen anymore.
What about the north area?
North side, good question up here. Thing is, you got pretty steep slopes. I think the rock up here is a little bit less prone to sinkholes, so they just don't form as much. However, you got that sinkhole there in that big basin there right on Ford Street. That's there. So now a lot of this water here ends up going down, some of it heads to the quarry right away, some of it goes this way right away into these quarries.
I know, that's.
But that is, I'd take note of this, especially there's some new developments up here. Keep an eye on it.
Years ago, there used to be a creek that went down from the reservoir into Henshaw's property. And when they built Orchard Estates, they must have blasted,
Okay?
and the creek somehow around center field of the baseball went underground. Because it used to go underneath Spruce Street.
I see.
And I think it goes down underneath Spruce Street into the basin there where them homes are.
Where-
That's
where-
why I'm getting them.
Why they're getting all the sinkholes, that could, easily could happen. If there's, the thing is here, underground, you got fault zones like this. You got a fault zone here, that's why they stopped the quarry, because the rock got shifted underground, so there's no more rock they could quarry. Same with these quarries stopped here because of the faults that moved this way. And so it's very, very complicated underground, so water can, following a path of water underground, like you said, it could change direction, go underground, you don't know where it's gonna pop up. But right now, the northern area looks relatively stable. Shouldn't say that maybe, but right now it does. Okay, you can go to the next. Quarry. Okay, mitigation, let's talk about some of this already. This is what we can do, maintain all underground pipes and utilities like we mentioned, just find a way to check them. Fix problems early. At the street level, make sure the streets, alleys, driveways, et cetera, are relatively impermeable, that water flows off. As you know, a lot of the alleys you go down in Palmyra, they're pretty busted up, pretty messed up, and water just down it goes. So that's something to definitely think about. Not only the alleys, but then the people with their drain spouts that just kind of hang out there. That all is a potential issue. So maintain your rooftop water and non-septic wastewater management structures. People with basements and French drains in their basement where their wash water goes. Bad. Don't do that. Manage stormwater runoff so surface water is directed to existing stormwater mitigation measures, just like East Cherry Street, great potential there. If subsidence features occur, if sinkholes occur, evaluate everyone with the context of the information presented here. This give you a big head start. We've learned a lot in the last 10 years. I've been working with the borough since about 10 years. And we've got it now where if Roger calls me, sinkhole issue, we can usually figure things out pretty quick as far as what to do. Is this something we got to spend a bunch of money on, or can we kind of small, just get a backhoe, get a guy to fill it up, cover it, keep an eye on it? Instead of, if you don't have the head-up knowledge, then a lot of people go in panic mode and think spending money is going to help it. I'll spend a lot of money. So that's why I want to emphasize this. And the level of effort required for potential remediation can be optimized if we use this results of the report. Study history, right? Study what we've done. And it will help future save money with fixing these sinkholes. I don't know if I got one more. Just executive summary, just what we did. We did what we said we're going to do. Made this report, collected a bunch of data. We did a 3D model that we made a surface water, groundwater model. The flow model shows the quarries connected. The quarry recently turned off, and we can explain that with our model. But no issues with our injection wells. No additional injection wells are needed right now. And we can use the existing injection wells as monitoring wells. So you don't have to spend money on anything new, which we thought maybe we would. We prioritized a list of areas, which I just showed you, and we gave you a list of improvements for stormwater management practices. So that's it. Next slide. Thanks for coming. That's a shot from the drone, man, from Friday.
Wow.
Right here. Injection well, good question. Sorry I didn't define it. That's where you drill a well in it, like a water well, but usually larger diameter, where water can flow and go into it and go underground permanently. It doesn't fill up. It just goes into the ground. So developers love it. Imagine spending a ton of money on 50 acres. The DEP comes along and says, you got to make 20% of that into a big stormwater basin. And say, no, we don't. We'll make a 10-inch diameter injection well, and all the water's going to go in that. And so we can now take that basin that you told us to make and make a new building and make money with it instead of.
So the soil at the bottom, that well's got to be very porous.
There's a zone at the bottom that takes the water. And that's what we've got this zones at the bottom of these wells take water and send it right to the quarry. Question. Where is the water in the quarry going? Good question. The water naturally enters the quarry at about over 8,000 gallons a minute. It's a huge amount of water. Like, that's a big pipe blowing water. That's nature by itself. So when it rains and the water goes into the quarry, or an injection well dumps water in there, it disperses into the water table around the quarry, pretty much, mostly to the west and to the east. It just fills the water table up outside the quarry. So it's areas outside the quarry, take it up. It's the water table is like an underground ocean in a way. And it just takes the water. It's very large volume of water, even compared to the quarry. So it's like anything. Water just goes into nature. It's a big deal. You have to think about it. Neighbors around you now getting water from it, but it all equilibrates. It's a good question. Also, what's an injection? It's a good question. Any other questions? Nobody's scared?
I have a question.
We all live
Okay.
With the alleys, would you recommend that we continue to work at paving them, the ones that aren't?
Yes. Pave the alleys best you can, and then once they're paved, make sure water's moving to where it can be managed into an injection well or some other feature. It's a big deal. Lots of alleys in Palmyra. As you know. Other questions? Cool, well, thanks. I'm around, talk to Roger a lot, so any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. We're at public period, period one.
public comment period.
Okay, takes us to public comment period number 1. Please step to the microphone at the podium, state your name and address for the record, and try to limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you, Chief. Do you need one? We can take a 5-minute recess.
That was definitely a lot of information. Dave McCloskey, 212 East Ridge. Tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about some things that occurred at the last borough meeting. 2 proposals for stormwater. And Roger, correct me if I state anything wrong, because they made me go on vacation, so I wasn't here. But I did watch it.
It's a horrible thing to need.
The one proposal, I believe, was $65,000, which took the stormwater west on Ridge, south on Kramer Way, across the first alleyway to Lincoln Street,
Correct.
producing the water onto Lincoln Street. The second proposal was to connect the existing roadway drain to the existing field drain and go across the Henshaw property for $95,000. Okay,
Yep.
so I did remember.
You got it.
Okay, so, Roger and I had talked about the Kramer Way, and I was okay with destroying my bank, destroying my wall, killing my bushes, which meant getting this water somewhere. Though that proposal is less expensive than the other one to go across the Henshaw property, it also creates a kick it down the road for the borough, in my opinion. From where that water would dump onto Lincoln Street, eventually the borough's gonna have to put in storm drain to capture that and take it down to the park, which is approximately 1,500 feet. To go across the Henshaw field, which is roughly 710 feet. So I'm looking ahead here and just calculating round numbers quickly, just to pipe it down Lincoln Street is gonna be well over $200,000. And I'm guessing, If I'm a resident on Lincoln Street, there's gonna be a full house here when the ice hits from the water running down the street. The likelihood of that ice breaking up the newly paved street may not happen for the first couple years, but it's gonna happen. I've tried to look at it from all sides, and I still come back to Mr. Bob the Builder, who has not been completely truthful with council. He indicated that there would be no more water coming down through properties. And by state law, that it has to be the case, and if there is, they have to have some remediation to take care of it. Well, when the first thing I found out is on the drawings that were supplied to you, the one for water discharge, the Department of PennDOT, or however you want to call them, their Bureau on Stormwater made them enlarge a pipe that comes under the road to carry the additional water. Now all of a sudden there's additional water, okay? We all missed it. We're not the experts, but I would assume that those in Lebanon County and possibly those that are on the zoning board for Palmyra have more expertise in this. And nobody mentioned it to council that I'm aware of. I've been to most of those meetings, and correct me if I'm wrong. If you'd have known that there was more stormwater, there'd have been probably a bigger uprising. Since Mr. Bob has created this issue and has waited 2 years in order to now be pushing us to try to make a decision, I feel it's in council's best interest to push Bob to help foot most of the bill. Now, having said that, if council decides to take the least amount of money and do that, so be it. But just remember, as the gentleman just said, maintain your pipes. The borough owns the pipe that's in the field now that's broken, so they're gonna have to fix it anyway. What's that cost? Don't know how bad it's broke. But that's an additional cost you can add on to that 65, because it has to be done. Again, I don't feel this is a borough problem for money as much as it's Bob the Builder's problem. And I think we ought to be talking to him to see what he's willing to do to rectify some of the injustices he's done to the borough. Roger, I believe one of the things we did talk about was North Londonderry didn't know about the train that goes under the road. The state didn't know about it. What's the chances that, since that is in close proximity to where the water used to run and seep out of the reservoir, that the water company owns that?
Well, my understanding is, the North Londonderry Township purchased that property from the water company, so
Right.
they own the property now.
But that's possibility of why they don't understand that they own it? That the water company put it in?
I couldn't explain that, I don't know.
But that's, since they own the land, that's something that we can work with them on?
We are.
Okay.
Our borough engineer has done an analysis of the amount of water that he feels is going to go through the new pipe to that inlet, and those calculations are being reviewed by North Londonderry Township, and they promised us a pretty quick response, so.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Again, thank you for your time. I hope you understand where those of us as homeowners are coming from. Yes, we don't like to see money being spent, but when it comes to a point where, yeah, we got to spend a little bit more now in order not not to cost a whole lot later. I think that's a smarter move. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment? No? Okay. All right. Closing public comment period number 1. Moving on to the consent calendar. The following agenda items will be acted upon by a single motion unless a member of Borough Council wishes a specific item to be voted on separately. Approve the minutes of the August 13th, 2024 Borough Council meeting. I have a question. Is it 60,000 or 65,000 for taking it west and across East Ridge Road?
I think it was
At
close,
Kramer
I think
Way.
it was closer to 65.
Okay, so you have 60 in the minutes. Do we need to correct that?
We can.
Okay, so approve the minutes of the August 13th, 2024 Borough Council meeting. Approve payment of all bills listed on the July 2024 detailed check listing report, and approve the treasurer's report for the period July 1 through July 31st, 2024. So moved. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that takes us to action and discussion items. Trick or treat night, discussion on and if appropriate, suggested motion upon recommendation from the Western Lebanon County Regional Police Department Chief of Police and the Lebanon County Police Chiefs Association. Trick or treat night shall be held in the borough on Thursday, October 31st from 6 to 8 p.m., rain or shine, in conjunction with countywide trick or treat night.
Motion. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Takes us to reports. Happy Labor Day to everybody. Trying to think when we're gonna meet again. Okay, that's all I have. Financial report, everybody has the, no, financial statement. Yeah, financial statement as of July 31st. Any questions, comments? Ahead of myself. Discussions, anything?
Less than 1%.
We good? Quiet, okay. Fire department. Still there? Okay. Roger, you got anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Library report. We have the library report in here. Any questions on that? Thank you, Jane. Takes us to Western Lebanon County Regional Police Department. Chief, what do you got?
Really nothing unless you have questions on the statistics that I gave you.
So I'm guessing 2023 is going to be zero for the rest of the year, since we don't have.
You can't compare it to, you know, what we do from that, so we're just gonna put the numbers that we have for this year, and then next year you'll start seeing numbers.
Proud of you guys the other day. I was in Anvil, there goes the new car. Get the Palmyra.
You like it, though?
That's good.
Did you like the look of the new car?
I still don't like it. And I get the Palmyra, and there's another one, so we are out there.
I'm still not used to seeing our officers down in Anvil.
What's
What are you
that?
doing down here? I said, I'm still not used to seeing our officers down in Anvil.
That's where it's home.
Never, it's all good. Yes, I know. We're good. Good? Okay, anybody have any questions for the chief or the police department in general? Okay, so charter agreement amendment. Discussion on and if appropriate. Suggested motion to approve the amendment to Article 7, Section B of the Western Lebanon County Regional Police Department, WLCRPD, charter agreement to reflect how court-based revenue must be managed for deposit to the WLCRPD. Any discussion? Okay,
Oh, sorry.
it's okay.
Maybe we shouldn't second that.
Do you want me to second it?
Let somebody else do it.
I'll second it instead of Jane. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye. Like I said, just not the right timing, I felt,
Okay.
so.
You don't have to give an explanation.
I
It's
know.
all good.
It's all good, thanks.
All right, anything else? Police? Roger, do you have anything under police?
I do not.
Okay, all right. Rec Commission,
We had our meeting on Wednesday, so I would expect Tina to get that report out. Usually the week before the next one. She was also away for a few days, so, or on vacation for a few days.
all right, solicitors report.
I do want to, sorry, I do
No,
want to
go
say
ahead.
something that we did. So for those of you who know Barry Regal, who was a North Londonderry Township supervisor for years, and a fixture
Yeah,
on the rec commission, he resigned from both positions due to health reasons. The rec commission has actually named their scholarship program after Barry, and he was presented with that on Wednesday night, so.
Is that the summer camp scholarship
Yes,
program?
I mean, it's well-deserved. I think he said 30-some years he was on the rec commission, so.
all right, nothing from the solicitor.
No.
Okay. Zoning codes and enforcement, zoning hearing board, hearing is scheduled for Monday, September 9th at 5:30 regarding 338 North Railroad Street Investments LLC is seeking a variance of the 35-foot maximum height allowance in the light industrial district to enable a building renovation of 41 feet high. Okay. We have that in front of, is that what's in front of us? Yes, that's what's in front of us. That's what's in your packet.
I have no issue with it. I mean,
As long as the
I-
fire department doesn't have a problem.
yeah, I like the character of that building. And it's a shame to see it altered, but I understand business. And we're thankful that the business is in the borough.
Yeah, I'm
And
happy
I
they're
don't think
still
that
here.
that's going to make too much of a difference when you see the rest of the mill.
Anybody disagree?
Business, let's go.
Okay. All right, Borough Manager's report.
Okay, first item we kind of already discussed with Mr. McCloskey's report, so I don't really have anything to add to that. We're waiting for the township to respond, so hopefully it'll be sooner than later. I think as far as the two options that we're left with, I think the borough engineer is also more comfortable with going to the east than to the west. And I think the developer's more comfortable going to the east than the west. There's a lot of utilities in the way going to the west before you get to Kramer that could be problematic. So I think it'll be better overall to go to the east, so.
My concern is, I think you mentioned about the asbestos pipe possibly breaking it.
Yeah,
That could create a whole issue in itself if it does get broken.
and it's an 8-inch water main, so that's, yeah. Yeah.
That could create a huge problem if that would break.
I'm
So,
also
yeah.
a little concerned with it,
And the price would really go up.
because eventually it would end up in the water, the detention basin, correct?
At legally
That's
do with
also
asbestos.
now a privately owned detention basin, or it will be as of January.
Well, it may not, well, if it goes to the, if you're talking about going to the east and flowing down
Yes.
naturally, it's gonna go to the huge sinkhole on the apartments.
Oh,
It
the
go-
one closer to the railroad
It'll flow
tracks?
down, it'll go under Spruce Street, and it'll go, you know how the apartment complex is kind of shaped in a U, and there's that big sinkhole in the center of it?
Yes.
It's like a cavern in there, and that's where that water goes.
Okay, and please don't get me wrong, you all know I live there, and I'm not necessarily concerned about water going into that basin, but I am concerned that it is a privately owned basin, so, but if you're telling me it will be a little more west than
Yes.
that detention basin.
Now, I'm sure it flows under you somehow and goes to
Yeah,
the
well,
quarry,
goes
like
to the-
Dr.
goes to the
Sean
quarry,
just
right.
explained, yeah.
Okay. Have they done any kind of research on that sinkhole? I mean, can it take more?
I'm sure it can. From what I understand, the Carl Kirchner from the Conservation District said when he was a kid, he used to spelunk in that thing. It's huge. He said it's literally like Indian Echo Caverns down there.
Who the heck would do
So-
that?
So,
I know a couple.
Okay, so there again, I mean, we'd have to go under, now, I mean, the north side, I mean, we've really been discussing stormwater on that part, in that part of town for
Years.
15 years.
Yeah, longer than I've been on
And, yeah,
council.
and I sort of just like, I sort of agree with Dave, and you know how much I love spending money. But I sort of agree that I think if we do it, we have to do it right.
Agreeing with you, correct?
I think I might be,
Okay. I was just making sure I was on the same page.
yeah,
Are you saying going west or going east?
east.
I think going east.
East.
I mean, it is a concern wherever water goes, but
No, that way. That's west, this way.
But there again, too, I mean, that's,
Your
The way we're
orientation in my
sitting.
head, yes.
we would have to get an easement from Henshaw's.
Yes, and I've already discussed that with her. She doesn't want anything for the easement itself. She just wants us to guarantee we maintain it and cover any, I mean, she's obviously there's gonna be a written easement agreement, you know, and she'll have her attorney review it. She wants us to reimburse us for any cost there, so that's minimal,
But
so.
since we don't know where that water goes, how it goes under Spruce, we'd have to actually put pipe.
There is pipes under
There is
Spruce,
pipe, that's
yes.
what we're talking about, that might be broken, or, I mean, we'd have to.
No, that's the one in the field.
Yeah.
Well, those are in the
Oh,
field.
in Henshaw's field?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
the stream kind of disappears,
yeah,
in the middle of
I
the
found that
field.
interesting.
yeah.
That
But during
stream was
heavy-
there in the 80s.
In the 90s.
Yes.
That was 40 years ago.
I'm just saying it was still there in the 80s.
It was there in the 90s.
The 90s. Okay,
Stream's
well, I
coming-
wasn't there in the 80s. I was
Stream's
there in the
coming back.
80s
Yeah.
at elementary school, so that's why I was,
90s.
I remember it being there then. Just trying to kind of figure when it disappeared.
And during heavy rains, it does flow, and it flows down through there, and it does flow under Spruce Street into that
Yeah.
sinkhole area, so.
Doesn't feel like 40 years, Jane, just remember that.
So I do have a couple other things. One real quick, you had approved a car show for the Palmyra Senior Center on September 15th. Apparently, that place has been sold under new ownership, and the new owner said, nope, you're not having a car show, and the band and all that stuff, so they canceled it.
Okay.
So that's off.
Okay.
And then, more excitingly, today was bid opening day for our refuse and recycling hauling contract. So in front of you, I put the minutes of the bid opening, and on the back of it, I kind of did some real quick back of the napkin kind of math to see what we're looking at for trash rates. And there's a couple things to look at here. We bid an alternate where the contractor would supply us with 96-gallon toters for trash and recycling, one of each. So that's what the alternate bid is. So that's the most expensive option. So if you decide you want to go that route, the estimated quarterly fee is $112. If you keep the program the same as it is, with Casella as the low bidder, you're looking at about $103, which is about a 15.2% increase what we have now. And then the bids for the single bag program pretty much renders the single bag program useless because it's,
Really does.
so they obviously bid that to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're at $98 versus $103 if you keep the program the same, so it's really
Do you know how many people were actually using that single bag?
61 or 2.
Probably why they wanted to get rid of it.
Two of them right in this room, at least.
I think if they would have allowed renters to use it, I think a lot more people would have used it. I know I would have, but I couldn't. So, I'm just saying, I think they shot themselves in the foot by not letting it.
So
Where are they
the bid packages look complete to me. I've scanned everything in and sent it to Joselle. She asked some questions. She's reviewing it to make sure everything has been submitted properly. So at the next meeting, you'll actually be able to take action to decide which way you want to go. So you'll have a couple weeks to think about it and talk to people and see how they
So
want to go.
do we know what happened to, was it GFL and Weigels had also?
GFL is basically Casella. Lebanon Farms
Oh.
became these guys. They've gotten sold
Oh, okay.
several times over the last several years.
I was gonna say, because this
So-
one didn't sound familiar.
Yeah, it's basically Lebanon Farms.
Okay.
Well, didn't you have 4 that you said were at the meeting?
Yeah, but we only got 2 bids, Waste Management bid and Casella bid, that was it.
Okay, so Weigels and
It did, and Goods
was
did
the
not.
other one, okay. Great.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this for quite some time. We knew it was happening.
It's actually not as bad as I thought it was gonna be.
No.
I mean, Waste Management's bid was bad. but
That's bad.
That was a bad one. But
It is true. I mean, what did Hershey have, like a 50% increase?
something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and the alternative to provide the toters isn't as bad either.
Exactly.
And there is a benefit to that because it gets rid of all that trash. I mean, they can only use the toter.
Yeah.
So you don't have 10 cans
Right.
overflowing and junk laying
Spilling.
beside it.
Exiting everywhere.
Then what
It would also
happens?
eliminate the stuff blowing down the alley, because it would be in the recycling, because the recycling would be in a toter with a lid.
Yep.
Well,
With lids.
here's the issue. Are they gonna have the same issue going down the alleys? They're gonna have to pick up the toters in the front of the houses?
I don't think so.
No.
That is why.
I think they'll still use rear load trucks with the tippers on the back.
Can we see if we can find that out, so we have to
Well,
make
we
a
will,
decision?
yeah.
Because there is a garbage company that I've seen, the trash has to be in the front.
Yes,
I
if
can't
if
think
you're
who it
using a
is.
single operator truck with the side arm, it has to
Can't
be out
think of who
front.
it is.
Yeah. They do have because they don't have a driver and then 2 guys to dump.
But is it them?
Yeah.
But in the bid packet, they showed regular trash trucks. Like, that was part of the bid packages. They had to show what equipment they were gonna use. So,
Oh, okay.
so I'm pretty sure
Okay.
it's just a regular trash truck with a tipper on the back.
That's perfect.
Now, maybe in the future, I mean, that's the way the waste industry's going. But we were talking about that today, and we're like, how would you do that in this town? Because all the on-street parking, where in the world are you putting your trash cans for the guy to grab that thing and tip it? I have no idea.
And some people have steps in the front to go up and down.
Yeah.
And the other thing for you to consider is, your contract actually changes in November. So, you may need to make this change for October the 1st so that we can start billing the new rate to cover the new contract.
Okay. So, do we need to make a decision at the next meeting or the second meeting in September to be safe?
I'm gonna have to do it before October 1. So,
We got 2.
We should be
So we have
ready to
2
go
meetings.
by the next meeting, so.
Okay. Okay. All right, so think about it and come prepared to vote next meeting, okay? Anybody have any questions right now that they can think of? Okay.
That's all I got.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Roger? Okay. Okay, no communications. Any other business? Chief? Mayor?
Quick question.
Okay.
I'm trying to understand something here. I understand that the borough has a library tax. Does any of the municipalities around us also have a tax that goes to the library? Or do they get funding from the other municipalities
Oh,
for
yes.
the library?
It's not, South and North do not have a library tax, but they donate money.
Okay.
And actually, they donate more than what our library tax generates.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we may be the only one with a special purpose
line.
library tax.
Right. Well, at least between North and South, I don't know about Lebanon
Right.
or, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we're the only ones with a specific
And
library
So
tax.
was
that
that
was-
one before that was in another line and we pulled it out?
No, well,
Or not?
That was
this
fire.
library tax was implemented
That's-
before Bob Longenecker.
Yeah, that was before I was even.
That was before I was on
I didn't
council.
know.
Yeah, yeah. And, part of the reason that that is, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they get the library's full-time employees get their health insurance and stuff through us.
Yeah, they reimburse
And
us.
then they reimburse us. So they get the group thing. So that is part of the reason why we don't pay quite as much as the other two. And actually, we might even pay more than South Londonderry.
I think we do.
I
Yeah,
think so.
I think it's just,
Is there any chance that they can move back into the borough at some point, you think? No,
I doubt
So
as
still
well
in
as
the
they're doing
library.
where they're at now, yeah, that's.
yeah.
of course.
They're doing very well there.
Satellite,
Yes, the
satellite,
library's doing
satellite.
very well. That is an option.
Okay,
That has always been an option.
that would be nice.
It's just, we just got the mortgage paid off, so we wanna.
Yeah, no, I got you. No, that would be nice, because I know a lot of people like that.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
it should be walking distance to people who,
Yeah,
especially kids.
yeah,
Agree.
cool, thanks.
Okay, public comment period number 2. Please step to the microphone at the podium and state your name and address for the record and try to limit your comments to 3 minutes. 2 for you. 2. You only get 2. You used one of your minutes last time.
Just for that, I'm gonna stand here for 7.
Oh,
No, actually, this one's for Roger directly. I'm trying to remember the last meeting. You made a comment about a different type of pipe that was thought about being used for the drain pipe for the stormwater, and you were gonna find out about what it was?
Yeah, since we're transporting water from one point to another point, what's in that hill now is just drain pipe, so that's perforated all the way around. Apparently, there's a pipe that's only perforated on the top half and it's solid on the bottom half. So obviously, it's a special pipe, it's expensive. That drove the cost up.
Why would we need perforated pipe?
Because you still need to capture the underground water that's flowing off that hill. I'm assuming that's what the point of that pipe was. Because it's drain tile. I mean, it's a drain tile field, basically.
But if you're putting storm drain in the streets of the borough, would you have to use the same thing?
No, it'd be solid pipe.
And it's just transferring water from one point to another? So unless there's a state mandate, could we not just put straight pipe in?
You could, that would be considerably less money. But
You like that? See?
But
I'm
then-
making brownie points
As
now.
long as, I mean, the dollar signs sound good. I just wanna know all the,
I mean,
ins and outs of it.
as long as the water's in the ground up there in the field, it's in the ground, it's not hurting anything.
Well, you don't, it might start coming out of the ground at some point, though. You
Well,
might
Now it
not
doesn't
like,
have a place to go.
That's okay, that's.
It doesn't have a place to go, and you may
It's-
create another problem.
It's gonna go across the road into the pasture, so it's not gonna hurt anything.
Did you live there when, the water came down Grant Street?
Which time?
Guy said before they come down.
I just was looking, I didn't understand it, and I'm
yeah.
not the expert. I mean, if that's what we have to put in, that's what we have to put in, but.
I think that's the concern, is if you do solid pipe, where's the pressure of the water, where does it go? Where does it force that water to go? I don't know.
Okay.
And if it forces itself out of the side of the bank onto the road and freezes, you know, what,
That's where it goes out.
yeah.
Highland Ridge.
Driving by, notice.
So that's really interesting. What does has the borough engineer weighed in on this?
I would think he's suggesting that we do the half and half.
The half and half?
Yeah. That way all your bases are covered.
Two and a half.
I'm kidding. Anybody else for public comment period number 2? Gentleman in the back, anything?
I think Don ought to say something.
Yeah. All right, closing public comment period number 2. Announcement, Borough Council will conduct its next public meetings on Tuesday, September 10th, 2024, and Tuesday, September 24th, 2024, beginning at 7 PM. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
I was